Hi, I'm Kevin,
And I'm Amanda.
and we are serving up
All that jam.
All That Jam, Quick Hit. Jonathan Byerly on Improvising and Venal Twin.
improvisation. Obviously, is an important part of what you're doing. How do you approach improvising on the guitar? Do you have like technique strategies?
Yeah, great question. I think we take a few different approaches, and sometimes no approach is a perfectly valid approach. But a lot of times we'll map out like sort of a tonal center. I mean, Robert and I tend to speak like in modal terms a lot, and so or even if someone like Dave puts down a bass line and I hear a chord, I'll just decide like where to center that chord, like and just play in different modes. And sometimes that can lead to interesting things. Like if Dave is playing an A, and maybe Robert thinks it's A minor, but if I don't hear that minor third, I might think that it's just A dominant seventh without the dominant seventh, and I'll play like a Mixolydian passage, and sometimes that really works, and sometimes the dissonance or tension that's created when it doesn't work can send you down a path that leads to something that ends up working. So yeah, we'll sometimes call out a chord or even a phrase to work with. Other times we'll just be like, let's just not say anything and just hit record and go. Um, we've been kind of like as we played out live. I think we're trying to find a balance between playing freely, but also having a bit of structure just to kind of like make it a good concert experience for like the audience. There's I there's this tension if you're a fan of free jazz, improvised music, experimental music. You're happy with going into a show with like no expectations, and part of the pleasure is kind of watching the band search for it, and maybe they find it, maybe they don't. On the other hand, like if you're kind of a jam band fan, and you like going to Fish shows or Dead shows, which I love, obviously. Those guys, they improvise, but they also have their peaks built in, and they've got their tentpole jams, and they know how to like tease an audience and bring a jam to climax and have a big resolve. And I'm interested. Obviously we're playing in like DIY spaces and tiny clubs and bars, but aspirationally, I mean, if we could create a concert experience, even if it's just like a liquid light show in a 100-person club, I would like to bring some of that excitement. So that all said, sometimes we premeditate a little bit what we're going to do. With some later recordings, we even introduced some compositions, but most of our gigs at this point have just been totally free, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't.
How do you balance your individual expression with the musical dialogue with your bandmates?
Um, well, I can speak for myself just personally. I mean, it's it's really interesting being like the worst musician in your band. Like, all three guys in the band besides me are so like just serious. I mean, they're just heavies, right? So it's cool to be the guy that's like treading water because it's it's making me a better musician. And it goes back to what I said earlier. Is I think as a guitar player, especially as a nervous guitar player, you might think you got to fill up all the space, playing notes. And I'm just always trying to listen more than I play and hold back, and just kind of let those guys do the thing, And yeah, I'm just always amazed by this stuff that, like, Andreas, the drummer, for example, will just pull out of his hat. I'll just be like, what the hell is this? And getting back to Dave and his whole like affinity for prog music, um, he as a player, not just as a listener, but as a big fan of the odd time keys. And so yeah, I'm just trying to keep up, but oftentimes when the four of us don't know what's going on, and I think this is true for a lot of improvised music. Sometimes interesting sounds are created simply by not knowing what the hell is going on. So, you know, playing out of time, playing out of key, this can create tension, which you know makes for an interesting listening experience. Could also sound like shit, but
One of my favorite things, I know it got panned a lot by people who went and saw The Dead, but was the not necessarily the drums always, but the space segment. And I always just found it fascinating that it was a musical conversation. I knew nothing about music. I couldn't tell if it was an F or a G they were playing, but I've heard him talk about it. And Phil once said that he liked it best when he decided to argue instead of going out and trying to play along with Jerry and Bobby. He was gonna play, no, that's not where we're going.
that's awesome. I've never read or heard Phil say that, but it makes total sense. And he would be the guy in that band to do that. I think, yeah. I mean, I think forcing some dissonance and like pulling the band out of any kind of like rote or cliched kind of vamp is something that we all maybe have done in the past. And I certainly, as a player and as a fan and a listener, I really don't seek safety in music. I want to be challenged and freaked out a little bit. And yeah, so I mean, with Venal Twin, it might be a challenging listen, maybe, I don't know, but I like the fact. I mean, that's part of the reason why we called it Venal Twin, as it's sort of like the evil or corrupt twin of our first tape, and it is meant to kind of maybe not weed anybody out, but it's for the heads that want to like actually put their headphones on and listen. So yeah. Yeah, I love the drums in space too, and even before it was like prescribed in every show, like in the '80s. There's moments like in the '70s when they had like Ned Lagan doing the with his like early synthesizers, just doing crazy stuff, and Phil would come out and be a big part of that, and yeah, that's some of the best stuff, like Summer '74, those spacey passages.
If you are enjoying All That Jam, please like and subscribe to our social media channels at All That Jam Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or visit our website, allthatjampod.com. Make sure to sign up for our email list and tune in every week for new episodes.
Also, look for full interviews on our YouTube channel. And remember, stay beautiful, but don't stay underground too long.